Countries of World War II: Germany, Italy, France, Britain, and finally Japan. Sources of some of the most epic events in history. The countries guided by strategies of war and protected by powerful weaponry. Germany, led by Hitler, arguably the most famous of the Axis leaders throughout World War II, was part of the Holocaust. Italy, led by Benito Mussolini, the first fascist dictator of Italy, joined World War II with the intention to expand its territory. Entering the war as a result of being invaded by the Axis, France later surrendered to Germany and was ripped in half by the Nazi Germans. Britain, led by Winston Churchill, who was the Prime Minister of London and one of the big three leaders in World War II, joined the war to protect other, smaller European countries from German Nazi rule. Japan, the leader of the Pacific Axis and the only Axis power in Asia, attacked China and America, inviting them to enter the war.
Born in Austria on April 20th, 1889, Hitler was many things after he became a German citizen. He was the Chancellor of Germany, the leader of Axis powers, and the implementer of the Holocaust, and thus a monster towards all Jews. The Axis powers originated in Germany and loosely united Germany, Italy, Japan, Romania, Hungary, and Bulgaria. When Germany invaded Austria and Poland, Hitler's hate towards Jews came forth in full swing. Austria and Poland's Jewish populations were decimated by the horror Hitler implemented. The Holocaust, a process of gathering Jews together in concentration camps and exterminating them in gas chambers in mass amounts. America had a strong hate for Germany at this time, and even stopped trade with them before the war broke out.
Another Axis country, Italy was led by the first dictator of Italy and one of the original creators of fascism, Benito Mussolini. Italy joined the war effort with the intention of expanding Italy to include parts of France and smaller countries in Europe. Later in World War II, Italy became agitated with the Germans for not giving Italy tasks to perform and became bored as a result. Italy attempted to make its own conquest, alone, and invade Greece. However, this conquest failed when Germans didn't assist Italy, and Mussolini was thus captured by Greek forces and thrown into prison. German special forces later rescued him, but in 1 month's time, he was kidnapped in Austria when traveling with retreating German forces and was identified by an Austrian man, apprehended, and quickly brought to Milan. There, he was publicly executed, hung by his feet, in fact. America disliked the fascist ideals, and since Italy had joined the bandwagon of the Axis powers, we disliked them as a country as well. However, when Mussolini was executed, Italy signed a treaty with the Allies, America included, and we opened up more to them as a result.
France entered the war in 1940 due to an invasion by Italian and German forces. Sadly, only a few months later, France crumbled underneath the pressure of German forces and surrendered. This surrender allowed the Nazis to rip France into two halves: the North, which consisted of actual French people, and the South, which consisted of Nazis. This is not to say that France was split equally. Rather, Germany, or Vichy France, occupied 3/5 of France, while the Free French Forces, FFF, occupied only 2/5 of their own country. The Vichy were headed by Henri Philippe Pétain, who was a general during World War I. The Vichy eradicated all Jews in addition to invading. The Free French Forces were led by the famous Charles de Gaulle, who was originally the Secretary of State for War and had immense support from the UK in fighting against the Nazis during their times of suppression and exile. America had never had any unpeaceful relationships with France since America's founding, and since America and France were both Allied forces, America was, indeed, allies with them in the war and assisted them in recovering key locations held by German forces in France. Winston Churchill led Britain against the Axis forces, and he himself was one of the big three commanders. the other two being Franklin D. Roosevelt and Joseph Stalin. Churchill was the Prime Minister of London and is still the only person to have been made an honorary citizen of the United States. Britain was one of the original Allied forces and joined the war in 1939, with the intention of protecting themselves, as well as many other smaller European countries, from invasion, such as Poland, Austria, and France. Churchill played a big role in the Blitz, which was essentially a long series of repetitive night air raids on London by German aircraft, with the intention to suppress the British forces. Winston Churchill protected the citizens and legal executives in London by creating the Cabinet War Rooms, which were essentially big underground bunkers in which Parliament worked. Britain was one of the strongest, most important members of the Allied forces, besides America. Other than the Revolutionary War, America has upheld fantastic relationships with the UK, and still shares trade routes with them and keeps up other friendly actions.
Tonight's raid opened with a smashing blare of gunfire and bombs. During the first few hours, the raiders came boring in from two directions. They were aided by the dim light of a pale, watery quarter moon. So far, it's one of the heaviest raids for many nights.
Leaders of the Pacific Axis, and the only Axis power in Asia, Japan mainly attacked China and America, and was the catalyst for their entry to the war, America via Pearl Harbor, 1941, and China with multiple invasions of the country. Japan, however, had a very professional military, and was highly trained. They were led by Hirohito, the emperor at the time, who sent out the orders to attack both Pearl Harbor and to attack China. In 1945, the atomic bombs were dropped in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, bringing the war to a complete stop. Pre-World War II, America's relationship with them involved merely trade, although during World War II, America did cut off basically all contact with Japan, cut off trade, and treated them as all other Axis forces were treated. However, post-World War II, treaties were signed, Japan now distraught after the bombings. Present relationships are still not the most preferable. And then, in 1945, with the act of America, not the country that had been the first to join the war, dropping the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the Second World War, bloodier than the first, came to a complete close. Hitler had committed suicide, signifying the moment of Germany's loss. Mussolini had been executed, and Italy thus destroyed. The true French had taken back their own territory, and a broken Eastern and Western world could start repairing themselves. Throughout the war, America simply cut off trade with the Axis countries and fought them, and vice versa for their friends, the Allied forces. After the war, America began solidifying friendships with the Allied forces, and remain to this day friendly to them. Wartime Axis countries are also treated kindly to this day, but the present relationships are not the most preferred, and are also not as solid as those with our war allies. This concludes a brief overview of World War II and our relationship with the key countries that participated. Thank you for watching.